YouTube, it's Faye, and for today's video I'm going to be showing you how to replace the spark plugs on the Toyota 3.4 liter V6 engine, or the 5VZ. So here goes. Here are the spark plugs that I got from Toyota. Obviously you're going to need 6 of them, and we're going to start out on the driver's side. And the first thing that I'm going to do is move some things out of my way to make my life a little easier. This one is totally optional. If you just find it annoying and want it out of your way. I've got my shallow 12mm socket to remove this bracket right here. And then there's another bolt down here mounted to the head. And you don't have to remove this, just loosen it. And the one at the bottom is a 14. Okay, so here's the bracket fully removed, but like I said, you don't have to remove this. You can just move it around to access the spark plugs on this side. I just removed it to make filming a little bit easier. But if you're one of those people who wants to take it all the way out, that's totally fine. You are just gonna disconnect this cable from the bracket by gently pulling it out of these 4 clips, and that's it. This hose here is a fuel line, and it is super flexible, so we don't need to remove that either to access any of our spark plugs. Now I'm just going to remove the wires one at a time. Now I've got my 5/8 spark plug socket. I like this one because it's magnetic, which is pretty cool. My long extension and obviously a ratchet. Okay, so my spark plugs are really bad, and you can tell, especially when comparing with the new spark plug, that the electrode is totally worn, there's buildup on there, and it just looks pretty gnarly. I mean, the color is actually a good sign. We can tell that I'm not running too lean or too rich. It looks just about right, which is great. This is an NGK spark plug, not the factory Denso, but it's a great second choice. Now, Toyota recommends that we replace these every 90,000 miles, pretty much the same time you do a timing belt. Which, that's another video. I need to do that too. But anyway, so every 90,000 miles, I've got 273,000 miles on the truck, which means that this should have been the 3rd time that the plugs were replaced. However, these don't look just 3,000 miles past due, but never know. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and put my new plug in. Some people like to take all the plugs out on one bank at a time and then replace them all at the same time. However, I live in complete fear of something falling down into the combustion chamber, so I don't like to leave my engine open longer than I need to. So I'm actually gonna pull one out at a time, put one in at a time. However, you can do it however you want to. All right, so I'm gonna go for it. Now I'm just gonna put the teeniest little bit of anti-seize on there before reinstallation. That's really all you, actually that's excessive. There we go. That's really all you need. Okay, and once it's hand tight in there, the goal is to tighten the spark plug just enough to be snug, and then of course to crush this washer. So we're going to do hand tight plus a 1/4 turn. And that's all you need, no more. And obviously putting everything back together is just the reverse of removal, right? Installation. So I normally will button up one side before I move on to the other side. However, during this process, I noticed that one of my plug wires is actually damaged. Ooh, much like my glove is is damaged. Now, normally, you know, a tune-up of today's car is like a little bit different than like the old times, right? So, you know, you picture cars, back from the 80s, and it's like a tune-up is spark plugs, wires, cap, rotor. Nowadays, you don't really replace the wires quite so much as you do the plugs. So Toyota actually never really recommends, at least not on this one, to replace the wires. They recommend just the plugs. And if I was to test these wires, they would probably be fine. However, I don't like this right here. The fact that this seal is squished, that's gonna allow, it's not gonna form a good seal, it's gonna allow moisture to get down into the spark plug tube, which is probably why that one was a little bit corroded and actually hard for me to extract. So I'm gonna go ahead and call in some wires and I'm gonna move on to the other side. All right, moving on to the passenger side, we just basically have to get this intake tube out of the way. Now we're gonna just carefully detach. This is usually really fragile. Now some people like to take off the whole air box. You can do that. I'm just gonna take off this tube. I'm gonna disconnect this ooh. That hose clamp is super loose. Normally you don't have this style clamp, but mine does. All of these hoses are gonna be super brittle, so just be really, really, really careful with all of these. You can see actually mine is cracked on both ends. I might wanna replace that. Next, I've got my 10mm socket. And these pliers to just carefully remove this tube. Oops, or it's gonna come out like that, which is also fine. Normally, this wire harness is installed here and here on the intake. Mine is not. Be really careful with these intakes because they are really prone to cracking. Gently separating mine. And you don't want to pry, obviously, on anything delicate. Just want to sort of break them loose. Well, that looks interesting and unhealthy. Okay. Next, I'm going to remove all 3 connectors for my coils. Now I've got my 10mm socket. And once again, my 5/8 magnetic spark plug socket, my extension, and my ratchet. Okay, and now that my plugs are all installed, I'm going to go ahead and put my coils back in. And you can of course see that I laid them out all nicely so that we've got 1, 3, and 5 just chilling in a row. However, in this case, since I'm going to be replacing the wires as well, it doesn't even really matter. I can just, put the coils in wherever I want to, assuming I don't have any problems with the coils and I'm not going to be doing any sort of diagnosis for a misfire or anything. Then I can just put them back in any particular order. Here I have my 3 10mm bolts. And my shorty, because I don't want to tighten these too tight. They're on the super soft aluminum valve cover. Now I've got my 90-degree pick. I'm going to lift up on the tab there. This tab. Okay, so here are my new wires. There we go, and then I just sort of pulled these wires a little bit, messed around with them until I was comfortable with the way that they were sitting. I'll put these clips back in. I'm gonna go over the fuel line now, underneath everything else. Oh. Remove your bungee from your fuel line if you had one. And then the fuel line's gonna sit on the back side. So I'm just gonna start my 12mm bolt here. I'm not gonna tighten it yet, because it'll be a lot harder for me to get my 14. Alright, so now I got both my bolts tightened. My little cable is in its place. It's a little heat shield if you still have that. And the fuel line is tucked behind. So that is how you replace spark plugs and wires on the 3.4-liter V6, the Toyota 5VZ engine. I'm gonna go for a spin now and see what a big difference my little tune-up made, and I will see y'all in my next video.